Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all of the action in the last week or so of British basketball. A lot of action to get
A lot of
through,
games.
Dave. Yeah, before we do that, I want to show you. I got a little bucket, Dave. A
Oh,
little
wow.
bucket with some sweets and chocolate and a scratch card, which I haven't done yet. But for it's basically said if my bucket gets low, use this one to top it up. That's nice, isn't it?
I think you get more stuff than me because I think you're more
Yeah.
eminently lovable than I am.
I
Yeah, to reality.
think that's a low bar, Dave.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think my edges are slightly rougher than yours. I think
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
scared of giving me nice stuff. But no, I'm open to nice stuff. Please
yeah,
don't be
yeah.
scared. Oh, that's nice. A nice little bucket. It looked more like an Easter kind of bunnies type of thing. Is that right?
Well, I did get an Easter bunny as well. I
Oh
wasn't
my
going to show you
goodness
that. I did get
gracious.
that as well. It's very nice.
I need to get out more. I need
You
to get
need to
away
go to
from the
Cheshire more, Dave. That's
Yeah, I
what
need
you
to go
need
to
to
Cheshire
do.
more. Yeah.
Um, by the way, following on from the old rant last week, I noticed that there's been a launch of the British Basketball Fans Association. It's got absolutely nothing to do with me, but I'll just give it a nod to people who haven't seen
I don't
it.
know, was that not URN www.danroutledge.com? Nothing to do with you.
It is not. It's definitely nothing to do with me, but it's out there on. I've seen it on Twitter and on Instagram. I assume it's on all other forms of social media. But the louder voice of people together is probably to be welcomed, I should imagine.
Absolutely, you are.
So.
You will go down in history as the Emmeline Pankhurst of British basketball
Yeah,
fandom.
yeah. So if that's the sort of thing that you would be interested in joining, I lean people towards it. As I say, they're on the social media channels, and you can find out more about it
I agree.
there. Let's start, Dave. We don't normally do Europe, but we can't ignore the fact that one of our teams made a European final for the first time ever. And not only that, it was your team, Dave, as well. Newcastle beat Warsaw in the semi, hammered Warsaw really in the semi-final, but unfortunately fell a little short in the second half against Voluntari in the final of the ENBL. But an incredible achievement to reach the final and to push Voluntari so close.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, you could say, well, they kind of won some close games in the group, which they did. They beat Dono by a point. They beat Voluntari when they should never have got anywhere near them. Um, and then they played it back in, and back in Santa broke his hand in the quarter between the two quarterfinal games, which and they dispatched of them. So there was still maybe an asterisk, an asterisk. But then to go to beat Warsaw again, and to beat them in the way that they did in the semi-finals, I thought it was super impressive.
Mm.
Because I mean Warsaw weren't great in the first half. They missed some foul shots, but Newcastle's defense was on it.
Eight
They,
turnovers in the first quarter, if I
you
recall
know, you know,
correctly.
and and they just looked like they were ready to play. And this is the reality of games over the course of the season. I know far more games are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Mm.
And they've certainly upped their game in the European games. And they also have a kind of a team which is kind of suited to the European games. Actually, if I was to look at them,
Mm.
not over athletic, but still with enough athleticism to actually have an advantage in Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas you would probably say in the SLB that they don't have a Thompson or a Adekunle, beg your pardon,
Adelican.
sorry, sorry, Dame, how many times this season, a Delakin or even like a Damon Robinson or Trayvon Barnes don't have any of that.
Mm.
So they're probably certainly not super athletic in SLB, but in Europe they've had this kind of good positional size across the board where,
Mm.
Pulliam 6'2", Okora 6'3", James comes in, he's 6'5", Knight is 6'6", or Tibbet is 6'5". So all these scorers have got good positional size about them, which has allowed them to defend at a good level in Europe, and then just to make enough plays. So I thought, I wasn't expecting them to go out there and win, to be honest, because they haven't been great in the league and they've played a lot of games. But they really showed up, and to be fair, they showed up in both games.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
just just didn't, and as did the fans. Well done, the guys who travelled out
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a
It was
fair
good.
weather fan, so yeah, so I don't count anymore. Um, and yeah, so having handled Shiki, they then gave voluntary. The best bit of the whole summary was the fact that you could hear the timeout and
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
Romanian coach going off it on Wednesday night. He's getting a rebound. He's a fucking 100 years old. About Darius. He's 60
Yeah,
years short, but you know what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah,
And I don't think I didn't. You took the mickey out of me when I said about when I talked about how great Newcastle's win against Voluntary was in the
yeah,
group. But
yeah,
they were the best team that I've
yeah,
seen probably in Newcastle in a long, long time. And the reason I thought that win was so remarkable was because I just never saw it coming even during the game.
yeah.
Um, and that kind of stayed. I mean, they scored 107 points in the semi-final against Inter, and they scored another 96 on the Eagles.
Yeah.
And they bring Kobe Justice off the bench. It was a super, super player,
Mm,
and from what I understand, a lot more money than most of the Eagles guys.
yeah.
And the size that they had and the competitiveness that they had, it was always, I think, going to be a little bit of a struggle for them, and to kind of score enough to stay with it. And the Eagles cracked us a little bit in that game in the final. They got James and Strutle had a bit of a
Yeah,
has
yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
timeout, which hasn't happened most of the season. Then Knight threw a cross-court pass in transition, if you remember, and gave away 2 points at the beginning of the third quarter. Subsequently learned that Knight hurt his toe in that game,
Mm,
so going on there. And then Alan Aikens at the end gets his money worth on getting thrown out with a forearm to the face of one of
yeah.
Skinner. He got a technical before that, and they just cracked just a little bit. I
Mm,
think that the pressure will just cracked them just a little bit. And voluntary had been there the year before,
mm,
but therefore were had to deal with the pain of having lost.
mm.
Uh, so, but overall, as you say, the first European men's final we've ever been in. And yeah, it's the ENBL, but there's some decent teams.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not awful teams. This isn't your kind of Luxembourg, Iceland, Ireland kind of invitation tournament.
Mm,
No, we're talking about teams that we've talked about over the years as being in bigger programs, and there's Donar in Holland and Ziki at well, not so much Ziki, but Voluntari Romania. Bamberg didn't even make it.
mm. Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
German BBL team. They
yeah,
got
yeah,
by Ziki and Newcastle
yeah.
Ziki. So it is. I think it's a substantial accomplishment. Probably not quite staggering, not quite to reach the level of kind of staggering, but a really substantial accomplishment
Mm,
to do what they did, to finish with a record, I think, of 9-3 or 10-3 or something like that
mm.
in that competition, whilst managing the ridiculous rigors of an SLB season.
Yeah.
And to be absolutely fair to them, whilst not being as strong as they were in January,
No, 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 no.
because they're without Spencer, they're without Delpesh, and they're beaten up a bit,
Mm,
So you'd have to say that it's actually, those guys who did that, who got themselves to those 2 games in 2 nights and got through that final and really gave it a hell of a shot because they had a chance for 5 minutes to go in the final. Really deserve everything, all the praise in the world.
Yep. Sixth, eighth, and ninth best teams in the SLB this season, all flying the flag in Europe. Not bad for a team, for a league that pumps out sewage.
Thank you
Uh,
very much, Dan. That's absolutely spot on. Let's give some credit to the product that we see and some of the players that we see. Sometimes it's about fit, it's about situation, it's about coaching, it's about determination. And it's not just about just signing all the best players. Ultimately Ricky McGill was in Jiki, they didn't want him.
mm,
I mean, they could have done with him on
yeah,
Friday, on
yeah,
that game
yeah,
on
yeah,
Tuesday night.
yeah.
And he's come back to Sheffield, probably I'm guessing for less money.
Mm,
And so we had, and yet he would have aided them, he would have improved
mm,
them.
mm,
And there's some high level basketball players that we have, and we are getting, I think, in Newcastle and Bristol to a lesser degree, because Bristol won the last 4 in Europe and they weren't far away from qualifying.
mm,
Um, but Newcastle and Bristol in these competitions, and with the occasional Caledonia surprise win
mm,
against top teams, that's Anvil and the German team, who, I
Mm.
can't remember which one it was.
Ludwigsburg, wasn't it?
Ludwigsburg, yeah,
Mm.
this year. That has to be giving us a substantial amount of respect. And that respect is tangible because it leads to more players being willing to play here. More importantly, more agents
Mm.
understanding the value of placing players here because it's an agent-led business now,
Mm.
which means that we can get better players at similar prices.
Mm.
That's how it works,
Mm.
because they now know that it's not a backward step and you're not going to be forgotten forever if you're in England.
Mm.
Um, there is a good for the country, for the sport in the country and in the league. Maybe some of the British guys who are abroad turn their heads and think, oh, actually, I played against that voluntary team. I played against Jiki or whatever, or wherever. Maybe the English league or the British league, sorry, isn't quite what people are filling us full of. As you say, full of sewage. It's
Mm.
just disrespectful nonsense,
Mm.
isn't it?
I don't know. I didn't read it.
Actually, neither did I, to
I
be
didn't
fair.
want to give it a click.
No, I didn't want to give it a click, no.
Let's go to Tuesday. London Lions 88, Manchester Basketball 90. No Briscoe, no Soko. Goodwin into the starting lineup for London. If AJ was out, DeBose was back. Manchester 5 of 7 from behind the arc in the first quarter, led by as many as 9, if you can remember this far back, Dave.
Well, I actually do remember this so about because I remember thinking that, that London's gonna have a problem without Briscoe. I really think that. And he is the one guy on that team who does something nobody else does. And losing a perimeter threat like him is disproportionate compared to losing other guys.
Mm.
I mean, you saw it with the Coro in Newcastle, probably slightly different level of player than they've got there as well. But you lose that certain guy, that guy who can basically shoot the ball from 30 feet, who you've got to be aware of all the time, and who can create for himself off the dribble, then the game becomes considerably harder. And Matthew Goodwin is not Michael Briscoe.
Mm.
He's a 19-year-old kid. And then they're bringing Aaron Badibo in, who's hardly played, who's just, I think, come back from college. So to play that spot as well. And they haven't got Adebayo as well. He's been out for a while now.
Mm.
So they lose a little bit more perimeter defense and the perimeter size they had at the beginning of the season, which means you're basically left with Peterson, Holloway, and Peterson, Holloway, you wouldn't regard as guys who are going to carry you through 40 minutes of an SRB game, scoring the ball enough to win you games against good teams.
Mm.
They're not. That's not what they've been brought in for. That the depth pieces and Peterson is an all-round point guard. So that puts a lot of pressure on their big guys. And unfortunately for London, Manchester in this game, the one thing Manchester are not short of is big guys. You're not going
Mm.
to
Yeah,
just.
yeah, yeah.
You got Zahari, you got Effigy, and then you've got the
So FJ was out for this game.
beg your pardon, and then you've got the wonderful return of Marcus Del Pesh
Mm.
who's playing as if he's a different player, the guy who struggled in Sheffield last year.
Yeah, yeah.
And you throw in then, but you look at the positional size of Manchester: Mitchell 6'7", Kyle 6'7", Zach Irvin
Irvin.
6'6", plays like he's 6'8" or 6'9". So they got a ton of. They're not going to back down from any physical issue, which means that it becomes a game of skill. And at
Mm.
that point, then you're tossing the balls in the air and seeing which way they land,
Mm. Mm.
because you'd argue that Ashton Langford is potentially the premier point guard in the league at the moment.
Mm. Mm.
You know, yeah, it went back and forward.
Yeah, two Mitchell threes had it out to 13. London did get it down to 6 just before halftime, and then they had a 12-0 run in the third quarter to lead 62-57. Manchester then came back with an 11-2 run early in the fourth to move 5 points up 75-80, and they were 79-86 up with 2.5 minutes to go, but threes from Dallaire. Holloway made his only shot of the game. That was a
Yeah,
three as well. And it was 87-86 inside the final minute.
yeah. You tell me what happened next because I've forgotten, but it was good. I
Okay.
can't
So
remember.
Ashton Langford drives to the basket, gets fouled 87-88 with
Yeah,
45 seconds to go. Holloway to the rim, he was also fouled. He goes 1 for 2, though. That was DeBose's fifth foul.
yes, that's
Scores are
right.
tied at 88. Timeout, no advance of the ball, but the shot clock went off, even though there was 24.1 on the game clock. Not sure why. Don't suppose it much matters. And then
Yeah,
Kayo leaves it to the end of the clock, drives, and an incredibly tough finish over Peterson. Might have even been fouled to be honest with you. But uh,
Yeah, that was that. I mean, that was a broken, not a broken play, but a play with nothing going for it. And
mm,
Kyle showed why he's a CBL MVP. I
mm,
mean, it wasn't. He did. You're right. I mean, it was a tough play.
mm,
The only thing I will say about that play, if you go back to it, is that he's got a bit of a mismatch on size on Peterson, and
mm,
Hadzibegovic was there but didn't come across.
mm,
And it's a difficult one for Hadzibegovic because he doesn't want to come across and give up an offensive rebound. If he comes across to try and swat it, he doesn't want to leave his man wide open to the basket for a layup. But once you've got a scorer like Kayo, and when you've got 3 seconds left in the game,
mm,
that's the threat. For
mm,
me, come across because Peterson had decent defensive position standing him up. I'd like to see Hadzibegovic come across and try and swat that ball away. And they're the decisions that make or win or lose games ultimately.
mm,
Doesn't mean if he'd done it, it would have been the right decision.
mm.
But you always prefer as a coach kind of an error of commission as opposed to omission.
Yeah, yeah,
Try and make a play, you know.
yeah.
But Kai is an under the radar guy.
Mm,
You don't really talk about him much. He's got 16. He knocks down his corner threes efficiently. He's got this kind of two dribble thing to the rim whereby once he gets his shoulder pass, he finishes at the rim. He doesn't, he scores at the rim or from the 3-point line, doesn't shoot many mid ranges at all. So he's really an efficient kind of modern day player.
mm.
And yeah, that was a absolute, and he doesn't actually beat his chest that much, which I
No,
like.
no, no.
He's not a chest beater. So even when he made that play, it wasn't, he's a business guy first and
Mm,
foremost.
mm.
So yeah, I think yeah, it was a great play by him, and Coach Mandalay continues to run roughshod through the league.
He does, yeah. That was with 1.4 seconds to go. There was a timeout advance, but Holloway missed on the buzzer, so that was the final basket. Um, Rye 8 for 11, 21 points. Delaire 19. Stuckman and Hadzabegovic had 11. Some Manchester players scored. I didn't write them down, so I don't know who.
Fair enough.
There we
Kyle
go.
got the two that mattered.
Kind of got the two at the end that were the most important.
I will say that from Langford, he is at this point full of confidence,
Mm,
and he is playing with a kind of a poise and a quickness, um, and he finishes around the rim so very very well.
mm.
Um, that is a difficult, he's a difficult guy to work out how to play. You've got to try and keep him left if you can, but it's not easy.
Bristol Flies 71, Sheffield Sharks 64. Walsh was out in this one. Not really much in the first quarter, despite the fact that Flyers shot the ball much better and out rebounded Sheffield. They were only up three at the end of the first quarter. It was one of them when you looked at the stats, you thought, how are they only up three at the end of the first quarter?
They kind of have quite a few empty possessions,
Mm,
Bristol, whereby you think, oh, you could have got something maybe a little bit better, you
mm,
know? I think that makes a difference, or maybe he's a little bit sloppy with the ball, whatever. Um, the story of this game for me was Sheffield, actually,
mm,
because ultimately they really struggled to put the ball in the basket and they struggled a little bit with their rotations. And following this game, they've changed them all around.
mm.
The biggest number in this game was, I think, eight, 8 points. 8 points were scored by people who weren't Clay, McGill, or Nixon.
I'm trying to do the maths now. 39, 41, 51, 13, I think it is. 21,
13,
18, and 12.
21, 18, 12. Okay, 13. Well, I'll take
Mm,
away the three that Jeffrey's drained on the buzzer at the end, which
mm,
doesn't really count.
mm,
So it's, sorry, my fault. So it's 10.
mm,
10 points. And then look at the talent you've got on that bench,
mm,
right? You got Jeffries, you got Groves, um, you got Glasgow, you got Reese. Um, and even then you've got Jamal Anderson, Jordan Routinho.
mm,
They scored 10 points between them in a game. That just can't happen. And that works if the other guys are going for 30 each, but the other guys weren't going for 30 each.
mm,
But they weren't shooting the ball particularly well, but they kept shooting it. And I think at the end of this game, Team Alliance looked at that and thought this has to change. We can't
mm,
keep relying on the same three guys so much. You've got to get more out of the rest of them. And in this game, I thought that McGill and Nixon basically chased the game a little bit. The reason those guys played more minutes is because Sheffield were behind, so you want to kind of keep your guys on the court to try and bring that back. But they chased it a little bit. They weren't. They'd been there. They played Bristol a few times now, so Bristol were ready to kind of get a win against Sheffield. But just they were a little bit predictable. You know where the shots were coming from, and you know they're really talented players. They can make the shots, but if they're on one of those games where they're not, and everybody else isn't involved and not touching the ball, suddenly you go through kind of prolonged droughts, and that's
Mm.
kind of what happened in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Sheffield briefly got in front in the third quarter, but the decisive run of the game came around the last break. Louis and Lewis helping them to 10 unanswered points to lead 62-51. And as we were saying, a low scoring game, 11 is a lot.
You have to score the ball, you know, and I mean, there's no way on God's earth that that Sheffield team with that roster should have 64 points in a SLB game.
Mm,
You know, but you know, you have the guys who are putting the ball up have to be. It's not so much on the coach, it's on the players. They have to know how to get other people involved, you know. And if you're constantly looking for your own and constantly pushing it for your own, or playing with certain groups, then you're missing some gifted scorers out.
mm,
You know, Jeffrey Groves is a gifted scorer. Groves really needs to touch the ball a lot in that team. And he hadn't been. Bristol, I thought, they played with great physicality. Um, they really needed it to be a low scoring game because they didn't score a lot of points.
mm,
So they benefited a little bit from Sheffield's dysfunctionality. Um, they're still playing hard. You know, at the end of the day, they're still playing hard, and they've got like 11,000 games
mm,
to play and stuff like that. But they're still playing hard, and they deserve to win.
mm. Lewis, 20.7 rebounds. Johnson, 11 and 5 assists. Louis and Robinson both had 10.
It's
Uh,
really strange. It really shouldn't work, this Lewis thing off the bench. On any normal basis, it shouldn't work because you're starting Leslie Smith, who hasn't started a game in like 20,000 years,
mm,
and Damon Robinson, and they're basically the same player, Leslie Smith and Damon Robinson, or similar skill sets, you know, similar body types, similar defenders.
mm,
So you're starting the two of them, then you bring in your rangy athletic four-man off the bench. So and he's often playing either alongside McCormack or as a five. So it's surprising but Lewis has really fitted into it like a glove.
mm,
It
mm,
might be because he's playing with McCormack. McCormack therefore gets to defend the inside a little bit more, where he's better. He doesn't have to defend the outside. Lewis can defend the outside, you know. Whereas in the past, if McCormack is coming on as a four and Smith's playing the five, McCormack's having to defend the perimeter where he struggles.
mm,
He struggles, but he's better in the paint, taking charges and
mm,
changing shots. So maybe it's just that kind of way that they've reconfigured the lineups. So, but the biggest thing when you reconfigure your lineup and you take a starter and you put him on the bench is whether they're going to buy in.
mm,
And he's bought in, you know,
mm,
so credit to him.
mm. Nixon 21, McGill 18, Clayton 12 and 9 rebounds. They were 17 of 30 from the free throw line and 33% from the floor, Sheffield. A lot of points left out there.
A lot of points left out there, but a lot of shots left out there too. You know, to say 10 points from the rest of that roster
Mm.
is not going to get it done. And to be fair, they changed and subsequently.
Let's go to Wednesday. Caledonia Gladiators 90, Surrey 89ers 81. Took a while for either team to score, which is always unfortunate in Scotland because they're all stood on their feet. But then Ray Gooden hit some threes, and Surrey led for most of the first quarter.
You pay for your seats, sit down, sit on them. Sorry, it's all.
Tradition.
No, it's tradition, but it's for me, it's a backwards tradition because all it does is heap pressure on your own team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't mind if you're doing the tifosi and you're furling the banners and you're
Mm.
throwing the partisan stuff on the court and all that type of stuff and you're dumping up and down and you're creating but the thing is we're going to stand up until you buggers score. If you don't score, we're going to have to keep standing up.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it becomes like, ooh, you know, I don't know, I think I don't see the positive benefit it gives the team. Anyway, that's a matter for them. They can do what they want. Yeah, so it was, yeah, Caledonia, sorry, it was up in Caledonia got Whelan back in this game. Is that right? Or was that the next game?
I haven't
I
written it down in this
think
game,
he
so
was
I'm
back. I think you
thinking,
came back
yeah.
off a bench. I might be
No,
wrong.
I've got it written down in the next game, so that suggests
Oh,
he
it
didn't
might have been
play
the
this
next
one.
game then.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, Caledonia, again, a lot of size. Sorry, a lot of offense, a lot of quickness. So it was a bit of a battle between the two of them.
Mm.
Um, what do I remember from this game?
Malcolm and Barnes hit threes as Caledonia went
I
on a
remember.
12-2 run in the second quarter to lead 35-27. And the lead peaked at 11 early third quarter, but Gooden dragged it down to 62-60 at the end of three.
Yeah, what I remember is like Fraser Malcolm shooting about 3,000% from three over the past. like 5 games. He doesn't seem like he's missed a shot.
Mm.
Um,
He was
and
3 or 4 in
oh,
this game. So
75%.
yeah,
Look, as you know,
yeah,
I'm on a kind of thing with numbers today. I don't
yeah,
really
yeah.
think about their statistical significance. I'm just exaggerating for the sake.
Mm.
Um, so, which I know is an anathema to numbers-based people like probably the equivalent of me poking sticks into your eyes
Mhm.
or scratching polystyrene or
Yeah,
something. Anyway, so yeah, so Caledonia were always up in the game.
yeah.
They got an excellent game. Spielman has really helped them with his 3 point, with his scoring, his ability to score from 3 levels, or particularly from the 3 point line and the kind of the pull up jump shot. And they just had enough. They just had enough defense in this game to get through. Um, Surrey just looked like maybe a little bit flat. But they've won 2 or 3 games in a row on the road. They obviously handled Cheshire at the weekend. They got a long, long trip to Glasgow to East Kilbride to play. And from memory, and obviously in the games that they've won, the bench hasn't played much, so
Mm.
they're not necessarily in much rhythm. I think the bench played a little bit more in this game. It probably didn't overly help them, but still, Caledonia are a good team at the moment.
Yeah. Ventura and Malcolm threes to open the fourth had them back up 8, but Surrey then got the next 7 points to make it 68-67. And then Barnes 3, Fagbenley 3 gave them a 7 point lead, and then Ramsey hit a couple of threes to put it beyond Surrey's reach.
Yeah, the 3 point jump shot's a game changer. I mean, in fact, Bentley hasn't made many this season. Kieran said he was shooting 11%. I thought, wow, that's more than I thought.
Mm,
So, when he makes one, you know that you're kind of going because he gives them, he helps them with their defense. From memory, Surrey's guards are just really tough to guard at the moment.
mm,
But I don't think they got as much out of their bigs in this game as perhaps
mm.
they needed. Um, I'm sorry, Dan, I'm struggling with this game.
That's all right.
I'm really struggling with it.
We've got to the end of that
Sorry,
one.
guys.
Ramsey
Oh, yeah.
21,
Go on.
Malcolm 3 or 4 for 16, Barnes 11. They were 13 of 29 for 3. Ray 20, James 18, Gooden 15 and 6 assists. They were 13 of 31 from 3.
What I will say is, however, that there's an embittered Surrey fan texted me to say that there was over 40 points scored by imports numbers 10, 11, and 12 for Caledonia this season in this game. Well,
I wonder who that might have been.
uh,
Let's go to Friday. Stick on the Caledonia theme.
as I said about it, that was so many scandals ago. We don't really
Yeah.
care anymore. Being buried
You
by
don't even remember
multitude of
that.
other scandals.
Bristol Flies 81, Caledonia Gladiators 62. Whelan was back, Walsh was back. Bristol hitting threes early on, got out to a 14-7 lead. Briefly got to 10 at one stage, but it was only a 6 at halftime. But when Bristol hit threes, particularly early on in the game, they look like a different team, don't they?
Yeah, but Robinson opens the game up for them.
Yeah,
Robinson
yeah.
makes threes. He looks like he could make every shot he takes. And I just think that it imbues the rest of them with a degree of confidence because Louis isn't really a scoring first point guard, you wouldn't say. Johnson isn't really looking to score anything like the way that he used to, and early on in the season, and so they don't have that many options in their starting lineup for scoring the basketball, so it becomes. Um, Kind of Robinson and who they're trying to get going early. This is a big game for Caledonia if you're working on the basis that they wanted to this other shot of getting in the top
Mm,
8 because Bristol with the team I think they're most likely to overtake.
yeah.
And they really were a little bit flat. They had a bit of a run in the second quarter,
Mm,
but they had a lack of offense in this game, which they really struggled to deal with. And again, Bristol played some pretty solid physical defense. Difficulty is, again, it's the other way around, isn't it? It's a long trip from
mm.
Caledonia to Bristol. I think did they not make it last week as well when the game 2 weeks ago when the game was
Yeah,
cancelled?
yeah, yeah.
That type of stuff wears on you,
Mm,
and then you've got to be ready to play. And coming off a nice win on the Wednesday. Now you've got that long trip, and now you've got to get ready to play on the road.
mm,
So I didn't think they were ready really to play. I thought they had a couple of little runs where they showed something, but they got to finish, and they didn't finish at the rim.
Bristol scored the first 8 points of the third quarter to lead by 14, 30, 46-32. Spearman and Barnes with threes and a 10-2 run that response to that cut it to three. And then early fourth quarter, Bristol scored 12 without reply to put it to 72-52, and that was the game.
Yeah, and it wasn't one of those kind of explosive runs from my memory. It was more kind of a score, stop.
Mm,
And they weren't taking away every look Caledonia had. Caledonia just couldn't knock anything down.
mm.
And they couldn't get anything at the rim. And I just think that it was
Ramsey was 0 of 10 in the game,
that
which
was
was
that was that was it. Yes, Ramsey really struggled. So coach then has to decide: do I stick with him? Do I not? Do I bring Whelan's just come back into it? That team, the way it's built, is not probably able to withstand Ramsey not being impactful.
mm,
It's the reality of it. They don't have the backup. They don't have somebody else they can check out. Johnny has to run with them as long as he can, and they don't have anybody else who can do what he does.
no, no.
So which involves breaking down the defense and creating a little bit of advantage that way. So yeah, that makes sense. I remember that now.
Mm. Johnson 16.6 assists, Walsh 16.7 of 10 shooting, 6 of 8 shooting for Robinson, who had 15 points and 9 rebounds. They were 11 of 28 for 3. Spielman 17, Whelan 13, nobody else in double figures for Caledonia.
Yeah.
Let's go to what I trailed as one of the best games of the season.
Mm.
Leicester Riders 100, Sheffield Sharks 95 after overtime. I text you, Dave, to say I won't give you the score, but it's
Mm.
one of the
Yeah.
best games. Was I too hyperbolic, or did you agree with me?
No, it was. It was great.
Yeah,
I mean, it was better for having a bit of history between the teams as well,
yeah,
because
yeah.
they played a couple of times recently in Sheffield, and those were sorry, one in Sheffield, one in Leicester, and certainly the game in Sheffield, Leicester were pretty peed off that they lost that game.
Mm,
And so that was only 3 or 4 weeks ago. So there's
yeah,
memory. I also think that, with London getting injuries, I think that Leicester in particular looked at the schedule the rest of the way and thought to themselves, well, hang on a minute, if we can sort this weekend out, we've still got a shot at this.
mm, mm,
Because of the fact that London and Sheffield still have to play two games
yeah,
against each, and Leicester obviously have the chance to beat London and win the head-to-head as well. So I think there was a substantial amount of motivation there for Leicester going into it. Sheffield have obviously been up and down. They've been struggling. They come off a really disappointing loss at Bristol. Albeit we then look at Leicester had the same really disappointing loss at Caledonia only last
yeah,
week.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So all these teams, um, there is no kind of gimme win at the moment.
Mm,
Possibly Newcastle and their bunch of um, hospital candidates.
mm.
Amput
We'll get to that in a minute.
but apart from that, everywhere you go, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And we're getting back to losses mattering again.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
Shelton was suspended for
he
this
did well,
game.
didn't he? He hit three people. He's only got one game this season. He's done really well, I'll be honest.
Washington was out injured as well, so they had no backup center, no backup point guard. Uh,
19 points, yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
like, 11 points is a one game ban, 19 points is a one game ban.
yeah.
Talk about straddling the line.
The I almost just want to get to the end of this. I know it's a
No,
great
no,
game. I
no.
just want to skip right past it to the
Yeah,
end.
no,
But
I mean, I'll tell you what happened in the game. I mean, the game was back and forward, lots of
mm,
talented players making
mm,
winning shots. I love the way that last time moved the basketball. Abercrombie continues to impress me with not actually with his shooting, but with everything else. I know he
mm,
can shoot. We know I mean, that's what we see.
mm,
But with his demeanor, his ball handling, his rebounding, when I say ball handling, I mean ball reversal,
mm,
his rebounding at both ends, and his willingness to take a shot when his team needs one.
mm.
So I thought he was exceptional. Obviously, we have the ball against the stanchion technicals,
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second.
which we'll
So
get to in a second.
what?
But I thought Sheffield just played with Sheffield changed their entire lineup. Let's be frank. Sheffield's bench suddenly was a major part of this game,
Mm,
which it hadn't been for all the past 5 or 6 games. Rod Glasgow came in, playing meaningful minutes as opposed to a couple of minutes at the end of the third quarter, and suddenly he looks like a different player. Well, would you believe it? The same Jacob Groves getting more touches. Nixon and McGill are playing less.
Mm,
Hopefully that'll make them more effective. But it meant that Sheffield are properly using everything they had, and I thought that it has to be the way forward for them. Otherwise, they're too predictable, and then therefore Reece is involved and all those guys. So I thought it was a really solid game. What I will say is that I know Shelton was out, and obviously they lost country a little bit there. I'm not sure. I think it was a good game for them to lose Shelton for, um, because I think Thompson was always going to need to play a lot of minutes in that game anyway.
mm,
Obviously, Thompson got in foul trouble, and maybe he could have used a bit from Shelton. But I think they needed. I think to win that game, they needed Thompson to play substantial minutes,
mm,
and it's so players can play a bit more than you think they can.
mm,
You're always worried about burning them out, but when you play a game like that, Leicester are looking at the schedule. You've got 5 or 6 games left, and yeah, you've got another game the next night. But that's a game. The game the next night doesn't matter if you lose that game.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So you're gonna play that guy a lot. So I thought that was helpful. Not helpful, but I didn't think it hurt them anything like it could have in maybe one of those games down in Caledonia or in Bristol where
Mm,
it's kind of everybody's just not quite as locked in for it.
mm.
And yeah, and the games just went the fourth quarter, but yeah,
So Leicester led by 9 in the second quarter. Sheffield led by 7 in the third quarter. Not really much in it. We'll get to the end, but before we do, we need to mention the technical that Hunter got in the second quarter. I'm really not a
the match of the
fan.
day, yellow card, isn't it? Everybody knows what happened there. We've
Yeah,
mentioned.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And we'll get to the McGill one later.
yeah.
But I'm not a fan of that technical foul because it's presumably he basically, for anybody who's not seen it, he's driving to the basket, he gets fouled, he ends up on the baseline with the ball in his hands, and he throws the ball off the side of the stanchion back to himself, sort of bounces it off the side of the stanchion. So I'm assuming that's down as visual dissent. But my thing is, you you can't visually dissent if you're not dissenting. He's not arguing a call because he's got the call. He's not arguing that it. So if it was called an offensive foul, I have no problem with it being a technical. If he scored the basket and he's waved off for some reason, but it's a defensive foul, I have no problem with the technical being called. But when he's got a foul, I don't think you can call a technical in that.
Um, Two things. I'm not sure it is visual dissent. I think there's probably something called equipment abuse. I'm not saying this was
Okay.
equipment abuse.
Yeah.
But I think, the old kind of kicking of the chair
Yeah.
or in frustration
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
ball being thrown off the court. And I think it was
So
Joe Hodgson called this.
I can't remember. It
I think
might
it
well
was.
have been.
I think it was Joe called. So he
I
called
think Joe called the second one. I think it was it Dave was Dave Griffin doing the
Griffin.
game? I think it was
Yeah, it might
Dave
have been.
Griffin called
But
the
whoever.
first one.
But anyway, So I'm just wondering, I'm not on this. I don't know this for certain, but I'm wondering if there is a directive about players actually throwing the ball off the court at any point.
So here's because my thing is there's absolutely no difference between what he did and that old bounce it hard to the ground
Well, there
thing.
is. Well, there is a difference because the difference is the ball could go into the crowd and could hit somebody.
Well, if he bounces it hard on the ground, it hits his foot. It could do that.
Well, yeah, in
We're
which case
talking
it'd probably be a technical.
hypothetical. There's
It'd probably
no
be a technical.
the crowd
No,
is elevated at that point with a
but
fence in between it.
all
So
I
it's
say in the NBA, any type. I'm devil's advocate here.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but in the NBA, any type of situation where the ball leaves the playing surface
Yeah.
as a result of what a player
He's
does.
the ball's already
No,
out of the playing surface because he's out of the
no,
playing
the
surface.
playing surface is a
That's why
yard.
he's level with the stanchion.
Yeah, the playing surface is a yard from
Well,
includes
then
the
it never left the thing because he threw it off the
okay,
side. It came right
okay.
back to him.
As I say,
My
well,
my
so
thing is, I don't think you need to call that as a
of course you don't.
technical foul. If he again, if a foul has been called on him, then to me then that's a different question. But in that situation, I just don't know
Well, we
how
get
that helps
well,
anything.
we get these technicals whereby people handle the ball after it goes through the rim.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not dissent. It's
yeah.
just technical because
It's a
it's
delay of game though, so
the
so
game.
that matters because Cheshire want to get down the other end of the thing and score before you can do it. And the best way to defend Cheshire would be every time you score, grab the ball and hold on to it for 2 seconds while you run back.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
That's why you get a delay of game technical.
I agree.
No
But the
problem with
point I'm
that.
making is that there are different ways of assigning technical fouls,
Mm,
different things. And the only explanation I can have is that any suggestion that the ball is flung off an implement or advertising hoarding or the back of the backboard is an automatic tech. I agree that with any degree of discretion, it probably shouldn't be.
mm,
So and I've got yeah, because you describe it as weak.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't even that hard, by the way.
No,
But
I didn't see
anyway,
it. I don't think I saw it on the TV,
yeah,
to be honest.
I didn't see the McGill one in real time.
I
But
don't
anyway, uh, match a day yellow card thing. The reason
know.
this matters is because with 6:30 to go, uh, Hunter is underneath the basket on a mismatch with Groves, and he basically grabs him. He gives him a hug from behind and virtually picks him up. So it's an unsportsmanlike foul, and obviously, when you've got
Oh,
a technical, you're disqualified from the game there. And so Leicester have got 6.5 minutes to play without a point guard. And Sheffield were up two at that moment in time. I said on commentary that there goes the game.
I think I thought I was a little bit hyperbolic when you said it. Simply because Ethan Wright's pretty good, and Ethan Wright
Mm,
can do lots of different things, and Leicester move the basketball as a team, and sometimes when you take the ball out of one guy's hands all the time, it can free up others to play.
mm.
Yeah, it was a dumb play by Hunter, that one. I mean, he gave the ref no choice
Yeah,
because of
there's
the
no defense to that one at all. Yeah.
And I mean, I've told you before on this, I hate the one technical, one
Mm,
sportsmanlike in your out rule.
mm,
I think it's probably David Cohen 3 years ago who got one of each, neither of which I thought were right. And actually, the one at Leicester was actually quite similar to throwing the ball, if I remember rightly.
mm,
I banged the floor. He banged the floor. That's right.
mm,
So probably not similar. But I don't like it. I think it's overly punitive. And particularly when technicals now and non-sports leagues now can be really quite minimalistic in their contact.
mm,
Yeah, certainly fast break on sports leagues can be committed without any intent at all.
mm,
So I think refs have to be careful when doing that simply because of the level of punishment. But once it's happened, you got to know better than that. And he's a
yeah, yeah.
rookie, and he's a bit of an agitator anyway. So so the refs may be looking for him with the first technical more than they would look for somebody else. Maybe I
Mm,
don't. But what it did do was, yeah, I mean, it meant that they had to play the 6 minutes without him and subsequently the overtime. Um, but that just gives Jackson the ball more.
mm.
That gets the ball in Jackson's hand. There's only one ball, and so only someone's going to have it at the end of the game. And I don't think anybody would suggest that the more touches Zach Jackson gets, it isn't better for that. And maybe he can get those touches if Jalen Hunter's bringing the basketball up.
Mm,
So this is the thing about basketball. It's such a brilliant game. Every action has a reaction.
mm,
Every
indeed.
something every negative action has a reaction. There's always a counter. There's always a
Mm,
countermeasure, and it depends on basically how the players who are on the court decide that they're going to take. Are they going to feel sorry for themselves, or are they going to step up and say we've got what we need here? So yeah, but it added to the environment certainly.
yeah, it certainly did. It was a great environment as well. We should shout out both sets of fans for a really good atmosphere. That's the other thing that adds into sort of game of the season thing. Because you've got a large number of away fans, again, the proximity of Leicester to Sheffield helps, and the sort of history of them playing each other in important games over the years as well.
Well, not just over the years, but this year.
Yeah,
What I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think over the years, yeah, okay, but I mean, basically everybody's played everybody in important games over the years. But
But like they were in the playoffs last year
yeah,
against us.
exactly. Oh, that's yeah, fair enough. But it's the state of the player this year. They're both competing to actually win something.
Yeah.
They played each other 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 games in 2 days. The stakes are high, and they have a very talented players.
Mm,
No
mm,
sewage.
yeah, yeah. So let's go to the last 2 minutes. It's a 1 point game, and then Reese with 1:58 to go hits a three, makes it 80-82. Jackson,
Sorry, Reese.
Reese, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Uh, Jackson drive a good contest by Clay, misses the shot. The rebound goes out of bounds off Jackson, so the ball goes back to Sheffield. Reese then a tough mid-range shot. Right, might have got a piece of it. It certainly fell a long way short. Leicester got the rebound. Uh, 102 to go, end of the shot clock. Jackson, top of the key, jump shot, ties the game up 82-82 with a very Zach Jackson shot.
Yeah.
46 seconds to go. McGill foul by Wright. Again, it was a good drive by McGill. He makes both free throws, 82-84. 23.4 seconds to go. End of the shot clock again. Incredible challenge by Clay. Somehow Jackson has the ball bounce. I don't know how. I thought he was trying to get a foul, and it somehow bounces in for three.
Well, Jackson has a incredible touch. That's probably the best way you would
Yeah,
describe it. You know, he's a big guy. He moves a little bit robotically at times from spot to spot, but all his movements are designed to get him in the position where he can shoot the ball.
yeah,
You know, there's no wasted movement with him. There's no unnecessary stuff. And you have to kind of go with his first move, and he always knows what his counter is going to be. If you take his counter away, he's got another counter. And eventually, Sheffield took a lot of this stuff, and then he finally has this great touch. You know, yeah, you know, whereby you'll come up a game, you'll shot 8 of 16, you think, I can't remember him missing 8 times
yeah,
because every shot he's shooting looks like it's a good shot.
yeah,
It's only special players have that, you know. And that was a special shot. I mean, that was a 23 a crunch time shot, basically out of nothing.
yeah.
And speaking good defense.
He may well have towed the line. In real time, I thought it was a three. Gavin, who was just in front of me, thought it was a three. And I think it was Joe on the opposite side signaled a three in real time. The replay might well have had his toe on the front of the line. But if you're not going to give them replay, you're going to have to take what they see.
Yeah,
85,
absolutely.
84. That's my message. Give them replay if
Yeah,
you're
them
not
replay.
happy.
It's not hard. 30 seconds.
So timeout, no advance. Lovely pick and roll. McGill and Clay, little pocket pass to
Yeah.
Clay. Look for all the world like he was going to score. Jackson came from the help side and did enough to put him off, and Abercrombie gets the rebound and he's fouled.
Yeah. Yeah, great defense from Jackson. I
Mm,
mean, Clay, it obviously is their bread and butter. You go to McGill and Clay, you're gonna throw Clay isn't actually he is better when he catches the ball and has a dribble on the rule. He's not one of these guys who is a kind of a lob dunker, if you know what I
mm,
mean.
mm.
Or he's a guy who likes to get his feet and has this tremendous dexterity on one dribble to go either side. He almost gets a choice to choose which way he's going. When I think on this one, I don't think he dribbled the basketball. I might be wrong.
I thought he did on this one. I
Did he
thought
on
he
this
did take
one?
one dribble because
Well,
it
maybe
was a
one
little
dribble to his
bounce
left,
at the free throw line. I
a
think it
little
was one
dribble to
dribble
his
and
left,
then
whereby
yeah,
he went
to
hard
the
to the
left.
basket. He didn't go, he
Yeah.
didn't frame up the guy. And when he goes hard to the basket, he's not quite as effective as he is when he's dancing around somebody.
Mm.
And so that probably.
Because from my angle, it looked like he had a clear lane to the basket, but
Yeah.
Jackson came from the wing and just sort
Well,
of,
you would if you got a clear lane, you go
yeah,
hard.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's not, I think he's a tempo guy, two-step guy, and but great play by Jackson. Abercrombie got
mm,
fouled. Yeah,
yeah. Abercrombie then makes both free throws with 10.1 seconds to go. So it's 87-84. Timeout, advance the ball. McGill inbounds it to Groves, gets it back, and then just hits an unbelievable shot, a real Ricky McGill basket to tie the scores 87-87.
yeah. I mean, if you remember last year, I had a bit of a pop at Leicester for letting Nixon step over
Mm,
and step to his left on the screen
yeah,
and
yeah.
there and shoot the three. And everybody's saying it was a great shot, and I'm thinking that's not good defense. Can't argue with the defense Leicester played on this one. I mean, it's a Hail Mary shot, and we've talked about McGill multiple times. He is utterly mercurial. He has the ability to make plays out of nothing, multiple plays in a row. And as good as Jackson's shot was, that was probably even slightly better.
Mm. Timeout, advance the ball. Jackson again, well contested by Clay, and this time he didn't get the friendly bounce, and the game goes to overtime.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought they looked a bit
That's
tired
all.
in overtime. To be fair, I
Yeah,
thought both teams looked a little tired. 100 seconds to go. It's 92-91. End of the shot clock. Thompson with a hook that misses, but Wright sneaks past McGill and tips it in for two to make it. It must be 92, 94, 91
one.
at that point.
Yeah,
And then McGill tried a very similar pocket pass to Clay to the one we were just describing a moment ago, but he'd actually popped out instead
Out.
of rolling to the basket. So
Okay.
it ends up straight into the hands of Jackson, who runs the floor but chooses to take the time rather than the points.
Yeah, Zach, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. But no, I mean that. Yeah, that's the McGill Clay thing. You know, it run it so often, but thing with making plays like that and making devastating plays whereby you create a basket off a pass is that sometimes it doesn't happen. It's a higher risk play, and yeah, they turned it over. Wright's play before that was really important as well. You know,
Yeah,
Wright
it
is really
was.
solid. You know, Wright is really solid in the stuff that he gives them. He's not sneaky athletic. He's just athletic. You
Mm.
know, at that point now. And that, yeah, once they got to five, I thought that was kind of, we did get to five, didn't it?
I think this makes it four here. I'm slightly confused by the scores I've written down because I've got 95, 91 after this score. So they
Right.
can't have been
Missed
94 on
one.
the previous one. 34.6 seconds to go. Thompson out to Abercrombie. Johnson cutting well with the ball is without the ball, sorry, is wide open underneath for a layup. 95 91. Sheffield called a timeout. And then suddenly the referee is at the table signaling technical foul on number one.
Mm.
The little table
Yeah.
tennis bat goes up. McGill is fouled out of the game, and we get a replay back. McGill is frustrated because he was in between two players and he didn't go to the right. He didn't go to either of them. So what he's done is he couldn't stop the score. The ball's come through the net. He's got the ball. He's given it a little clap as they do, and then he just sort of in frustration throws it off the stanchion. And of course, having called Hunter for the same
McGill.
technical earlier in the game, you have to call it on McGill. I think both of them are terrible. I think both
Yeah.
of them are not technical,
Unnecessary.
not
Yeah.
necessary. He's frustrated because he's given up an important basket. There's nothing wrong with that.
And
Again,
then
I
they,
go
they,
back to if he bounced it hard on the floor, it would have done exactly the same
and then
thing, but he wouldn't have got a technical for it.
and then did they put it on the bench?
So initially, it was given as his
Time
fifth
out,
foul.
I'm guessing.
Then, during the timeout, and I only learned this afterwards. I didn't. I wasn't aware in real time. The referees have decided because it was a timeout, he's
Yes.
therefore no
Yeah.
longer on the floor, and it's a bench
That's what
technical.
I guessed had happened. I was shouting at the TV if you would tell people that. Sorry. Yeah.
Somebody sent me a clip of the of an explanation which would appear to suggest that is the correct interpretation. Now,
Well, sounds like
again,
nonsense, doesn't it? I
hey,
mean, a bench technical is somebody who's on the bench.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's nonsense, really. I mean, it might be the right
So
interpretation, but it's practically just nonsense.
well,
Sorry.
let me carry on.
Okay.
So I think it's madness because
Yeah.
he's on the court,
Yeah.
so therefore it's on the court and the technicality of the thing. So even if that rule is correct,
Yeah.
and I've got something else to share with you in a second. Even if that's correct, I think that's madness. Can
Yeah.
you imagine if that was the third technical on a coach and a coach is disqualified for a
Exactly.
player doing that at the start of a timeout, which if the referee had called the technical before the timeout would have gone on the player. There would have been absolute
Outright.
mayhem if that had happened. It makes no sense.
Justified.
Somebody though else who's very conversant in the rules has since told me that that was the wrong decision, and anyone who is on the court at the point at which the timeout is called is considered to be on the
Not on the
court,
court.
and therefore the technical should have been on him. That would make more sense to me as a rule. I don't know that that's the case, but that's what I've been told. The exception would be is if there was a requested sub that happened to be for that player, then when the sub is requested, they become on the bench in the same way the example
That
was
when the
given
sub
to
is
me
requested, or when the sub is called in, is that
when the
who?
sub well in a timeout because you don't have to wait for approval. It's the point at which are requested. So the example that was given to me was at Sheffield earlier this year. If you remember, Larry Austin got a technical, then he was subbed out, and as he was walking off, he was still
Oh,
on the court, but
yeah.
he was being subbed out. He did something to get another technical, but that one went on the bench rather than him, so he was able to stay in the game.
Yeah, I'm pretty. dubious about all this, aren't you?
Well,
I mean, if,
uh,
if a player bollocks the ref and then gets a technical and then he can't shut his mouth as he's walking off after being subbed, he
yeah,
should get a technical.
yeah, yeah,
You know, I
yeah,
mean, to say, oh, well, that's a bench, that's just a cop out.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah.
yeah.
If he's not sat
Uh,
on the bench, you know?
that one is slightly more clear cut to me than a timeout has been called, so everybody's on the bench.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't follow the logic of that, and I don't think it's fair on the coach to get a technical for that. Personally, I just don't think it's fair. And as I say, if if something had happened earlier in the game and a
Mm.
coach ends up getting disqualified for that, I just don't think that's right.
That's
It,
just,
it, it might be the rule. I don't think it's right.
no, yeah. Yeah, I'm on your side again.
Anyway, it was given a bench technical, so Ricky McGill was not out of the game. He was able to come back into the game after the timeout because that's the other thing is
That would have
he's
been,
not left the game.
yeah,
Like the clock hasn't ticked, he's not left the game.
that's right.
Anyway, but Leicester get a free throw and make it. And now I've got to 97, 91. So I'm guessing that layup made it 96, and my 94 was right the previous time. With 36.4 seconds to go. Sheffield obviously need a score. I thought Reese gave up an open three for a more difficult one, and then
Yeah,
missed it. Leicester got the rebound, and Wright made some free throws to seal the win.
yeah, great win. Great win for them in that gym, pit players down. It's a good, when someone like Hunter goes down and you lose him and you come out with the win, that gives you a massive, it gives the rest of the group a massive boost,
Mm,
and it gives Hunter a massive boost as well, which is all these guys are got my back, etc.
mm,
And the moment Sheffield have had their kind of ins and outs with, they've got a lot more players, playing worthy of substantial minutes than Leicester have, and than London have at the moment. Um, so Sheffield's chemistry has been a little bit up and down, um, but Leicester's chemistry has kind of held strong throughout the year, and that can be really important going into the last 2 weeks of the season where we seem to play half the games in the league and wins.
So Jackson, 28 points, 5 assists, 43 minutes and 13 seconds
Yeah.
played. Abercrombie, 22, Wright, 18 points and 7 rebounds, and some big minutes at point guard, as you said. Groves, 22, McGill, 17, and Nixon, 11 for Sheffield.
Yeah, well, Wright was Ivy League, wasn't he? He went to Princeton. He knows how to play. He
Mm,
knows how, they in Princeton, they played with Tozan, and they have a they had a very kind of guard-centric offense, five-out offense, but everybody got the hand, everybody had to cut, everybody had to move with the basketball. So he's not your bog standard kind of SLB2 guard.
mm,
He's just, very, very heady player.
mm. So we spent a long time on that game. I don't think we're quite spend as
No.
much on this one now. Newcastle Eagles 69, Manchester Basketball 100. No night for Newcastle, as you mentioned earlier. Neighbour getting his first start since October 23. Kerry and John hitting threes. Manchester were 9-18 ahead after 7.5 minutes. Second quarter there to 16-3 spell. It was 25-42 and just kept
It
growing
was a
from there.
16-3 spell, basically. What
Yeah,
happened was
yeah.
second quarter, Okara got a second foul. Mark took him off. He put Candy in for the second time in the game. And at that point, the initial burst of energy Newcastle had just died. And it wasn't Candy's fault. It was just, they just died. It's the worst team in the league to play against in that situation
Mm,
because Manchester are probably the most athletic team in the league. FJ was back. They got the three league. They got lots of size. And Ashton Langford, who basically played the game at his own speed and just ran it. What I will say though is that not a single person in the arena had any problem with Newcastle getting beat by 30 at home.
no.
That's a scheduling issue.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Now, the reality,
I obviously don't bet. If I was betting,
yeah.
I'd have put all my money on Manchester in this game by a
I
massive
mean,
number. I
they
probably
played.
would have put all my money on Sheffield as well,
I
to
mean,
be
look, at
fair.
the
But
end of the day, and before people think I'm whinging, this is. I mean, this is um they fly out to Slovakia at a ridiculous hour on Sunday on because you've got to get commercial flights or Ryanair, whatever. Sunday night, I think they get there at 1 o'clock Monday morning. They play Warsaw on the Tuesday night. They then play Voluntary on the Wednesday night, and in games which are competitively heightened because there is so much at stake.
mm,
They then go to an airport in Slovakia at 4 o'clock on Thursday morning, which is when the flight leaves to Gdansk,
Mm,
right? And they fly to Gdansk so they can get a direct flight back to Newcastle.
mm,
Arrive back in Newcastle about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday afternoon. And then they're faced with that Manchester team 30 hours later,
mm.
the gym. And when people say it was Newcastle's home game, why couldn't they move it? They couldn't. There's no other time to play it.
No.
There is no other. There are too many games.
Mm,
There are too many games to fit in. Um, you say, well, could they not have played earlier? Newcastle basically have to play their games on Friday nights because the arena is in use on the Saturday and the Sunday.
mm,
They can set up the ladies' games on a Saturday night via the one court down the middle with
mm,
the fans coming out, but they can't set up the full court on a Saturday because of the youth programs that are in there. And even if they did, they would have had to play on Sunday in Sheffield anyway, so it wouldn't have made any difference.
mm, mm,
You know, and then this week they're playing Thursday, then they're playing Monday around Easter, and
mm,
then you know, and I think sorry, Thursday, Saturday, and Monday they're playing this
mm,
week,
mm,
and Saturday's in Surrey. So Thursday at home, Saturday in Surrey, Monday back at home again.
mm,
I mean, we are literally these guys are athletes. They are towards the thorough, as far as athletes go, they are towards the thoroughbred level of status as
mm,
opposed to the cart horses. You know, it's not your 6'4" centre forward who's playing for Doncaster Rovers who you can kick the ball up to and he's going to go off pie and chips after the game.
mm,
Albeit these guys have a penchant for McDonald's, from what I
mm.
gather. In fact, all of them.
KFC.
Yeah, KFC. But you can't treat thoroughbreds like that.
Mm,
You just can't. I mean, these are these guys' careers. You know, they shouldn't be expected to play with inadequate rest, and they shouldn't be expected to play. Now, obviously, it's their fault they got to the finals, and no one knew and expected they were going to get to the
yeah,
final
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on Tuesday and on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I
I
can't
have
go.
some sympathy to that argument as well because the reality is the easiest way to not have loads of fixtures is to lose more games.
Yeah,
But the thing that's always sort of intrigued me over the years is how easy it is to move games early in the season,
yeah, they
and
play
then you wonder
absolutely.
why you end up playing 3 times a week at the end of the season.
Absolutely. And on top of that, as I say, you know, if you get to semi-finals and you have to shift games out of there
Yeah,
and you have to
yeah.
play them straight away. But and they're not the only team. Their team, it's just that their situation is
Bristol playing every
Bristol
other
done.
day.
But Newcastle's situation is exacerbated by the fact that they had two massive games in Slovakia
Yeah,
and they've got injuries. So
yeah.
it makes things worse. But they're not the only team who has a problem. So I'm not playing the violin for them entirely. But when I look at that, which says, right, okay, you're playing Tuesday and Wednesday in Bratislava, you're playing Friday in Newcastle, you're playing Sunday in Sheffield, you're playing Thursday in Newcastle, you're playing Saturday in Surrey, you're playing Monday in Newcastle. I'm thinking, you know, this is just nuts. I mean, how are we going to, you got to sell tickets for all these games? You know, you're not putting out your best product. Um, and I know that people want lots of games, but they've played more games this year than we ever did.
Mm,
You know, they played more games than we did when we won everything.
mm,
We played every game you could play, and they played more. And if we want, ENBL is different because it goes through the season. London managed it in Euro Cup because obviously the depth of the squad and the quality of the talent meant that they didn't have to play everybody all the time.
mm.
But Newcastle are 1-9 in the last 10 league games,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and that's
And
partly because
Manchester are 9-1.
Manchester are 9-1, and that what that comes from is one is that Manchester have been able to add talent over the course of the season, and
Mm,
Newcastle lost it by injury, but primarily, and secondly, the Newcastle have had in the midst of that 1-9, they've played Bakken and beaten them, and they've played
mm,
those two European games as well.
mm,
So in fact, that 1-9 is actually. If you take the Bakken game as two wins, it's which it wasn't, I know, but it basically was is 4-10 in 14 games. The Manchester played 10. The
mm,
Manchester got deeper squad. So it's always going to happen. Now, as I say, my answer for this is to say that we can't have two-legged semi-finals in every competition.
mm,
We don't need to be wasting as much of the beginning of the season as we do on the trophy. We waste basically 5 weeks to play 5 weeks for the Southern team to play 6 games,
mm,
right? I mean, get that done in 3 weeks, get on with the league, play those games up front, get on with the league. And finally, there has to be a thought as to whether or not, the 32 game thing is viable. I know it's always been viable before. This is where we don't have enough teams. We've got if you've only played each other 3 times and you only got 24 games, it's probably not viable either. That's the problem.
Kingston won the league 23-1.
23-1. So
Mm.
it could be, but if you want to promote game, I mean, and then you have teams who aren't getting enough home games
Yeah,
as
yeah,
opposed to
yeah. It's a,
European teams who are. So
it's a
I'm
balance.
not against it. The sweet spot is 30, probably 28 to 30. That is the
Mm.
sweet spot. And the sweet spot would be a 15 or a 16 team league where you play each other
Play
twice
each other
with
home and
28
away.
to 30 games.
Yeah,
That is the sweet spot. And if it was 14 teams, then you'd go with 26 games and you'd survive on that.
yeah. Mm.
The 32 games means that what we have now, and we're seeing it in London as well, this is a battle of attrition,
Mm.
and it's about how, it's about the whole league. And I'm not really talking about Newcastle Manchester again now because there's nothing to talk about. Um, it's about that, who's going to be healthiest is going to may well end up winning the league.
Mm.
If I'm telling you now, if Michael Briscoe was healthy and if Zach Jackson had hurt his toe like Seneca Knight apparently has hurt his toe, and Zach Jackson was out, you would say, well, that's Leicester's chances gone.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not, it's just a degree of.
That can happen anyway. That's
It
that.
can
I think
happen. It
that's
can
an
happen
aside to the
anywhere. But the point is that it happens more. The more that you play, the more you put these thoroughbreds at risk of getting hurt, and also the less you get the best out of them in every game. Okay. Now, as I say, well, what about does that Manchester have a lot of resources and they have a really good team now? No question about it.
Mm.
And a coach who's utilising to the best of their degree, and they're a dangerous, dangerous team going into the finals.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely no question about that. Um, and as I say, you got Newcastle played in Europe, so they to a certain degree brought it on themselves. And Newcastle don't have the depth, and more than that, they got a bit unlucky because you can't replace Spencer because he's a British point guard, and you can't get a British point guard in the middle of January, and you
Yeah,
can't replace Delpesh because it was the signing deadline, and on top of that, he's British, and you
yeah,
can't get a centre at the end of February.
yeah, yeah,
So the wrong guys got hurt, as it were, just like
yeah,
Leicester.
yeah,
Bowman, you can't replace Bowman,
yeah, yeah,
you know. So so you're going to get mismatches like that. But then playing on the Friday night after that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing. I mean, I thought Cole Long needed to be literally put down in this game
yeah.
because I thought, bless him, I thought he was out on his feet the whole game. He looked like he needed a good meal and a hot bath.
Mm.
Right. And he played 32 minutes on Tuesday night, another 25 minutes. He's playing against bigger guys because they haven't got much size inside. Um, Mega impressed with Manchester, insofar as their professionalism, the way they carried it off. Really impressed with the coach because he was coaching, he knew what was going on. He knew they were going to win.
Mm.
But 4 minutes to go, Kyle Carey does something silly and he's on him on the bench. I think it was a bad foul or something, a foul he didn't need to commit. And he's coaching him on the bench. He's on him
Mm.
as to why that wasn't a good decision, why that wasn't a good thing to do. And I just thought they have a degree of belief to them now,
Mm.
which they didn't have earlier in the season. And if Ashton Langford had played the whole season, he would be an MVP candidate, no question.
Well, that was longer than I was expecting. Akara
Well, you got
21,
to get a
Alan.
fixture rant in every so
Yeah,
often.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Get it in.
this is a perfect example of it, though.
Yeah, it
You
is. Yeah. Akara 21, Alan Ikens 13, Pullingham 13, 31% from the floor. Ashton Langford 18, Delpesh 13, Carey 13, 56% from the floor. Saturday, Surrey 89 is 88.
know.
Close, not quite. London Lions 80. Lawrence was back. Soko and Briscoe still out. Ray 2 corner threes, and it's 8-0 after a minute and a half. And Coach Bojic calling a timeout.
Yeah, and Goodwin never came back in.
Mm,
Um, this was the first game I thought there was Surrey were great. Surrey are again. I've said Manchester are really, really good. Surrey, when they are rolling, are as tough to guard as anybody,
mm,
right? And we're at that point of the season whereby everybody should be winning their home games if you're healthy.
mm,
'Cause they're all, everybody. It's always the same. Everybody's better in March than they are in September. And we'll go back to next September and we'll forget that and we'll say, oh, the standards dropped off. No, because
mm,
by the time we get to March, they'll be back where they are because they're used to playing with each other. They've got more rhythm. They've got focus on things. And so basically dominated London in this game,
mm,
despite the fact London had a ridiculous amount of offensive rebounds. The reality was, Surrey had guys who could score the ball,
mm,
and London Really didn't. Rye struggled in this game. He was antsy, and that's a fair. Every so often you get a game whereby he shows a little bit more frustration than he normally does, and that's because the pressure is on now. It's
Mm.
ticking a little bit. They are ticking a bit, and they've lost a game at Bristol, which they thought that they were going to win. They've lost a game at Leicester. Leicester.
Leicester last week, yeah, yeah.
That's the last week. So suddenly they're 12 game winning streak and everybody is happy and you're gliding along the top of the lake, and everything, walking on the water and there's no ripples anywhere and everybody's happy and suddenly, oh my goodness, this isn't quite the way it's going to be. We're not going to be coronated here.
Mm.
And I thought this was the first game they showed a degree of frustration about that. And they missed a ton of foul shots.
Mm.
They were, as I say, they rebounded the ball really well. They still played to their strengths, which is basically the size that they have with Dallaire and Hadžibegovic and Ryan and those guys. But they couldn't defend in space,
Mm.
and they didn't have enough people to. They didn't have Brisker to knock down the shots that they needed knocking down when they needed them.
Lions did have a 9-0 run to lead 14-16. Then a Delican scoring got Surrey out on a 12-2 run to lead 32-25. It moved to double figures early in the third quarter and it was pretty comfortable after that. They led by as many as 20, and actually the final score was as close as they got in the second half, London and
Yeah, well,
Leeds.
they really struggled to get any stops, and Holloway made some shots early, but other than that, Peterson didn't make many shots in this game,
Mm.
and they don't really have any guard offense off the bench, so he's kind of Stuckman and um, he's rotating Stuckman and Dallaire and Sandy Hadžibegovic and the big guys, but off the bench. They need those two guards to score in those games, and Peterson didn't have one of the games where he was scoring the ball. I was wondering at some point whether he's just going to go all out and put Rye at the point guard spot
Mm.
and just go Rye, Holloway, three more big guys to there on the wing and see. But then you have that problem: who guards Ray? Who guards Gooden?
Mm.
It's a chess game, and I understand why you wouldn't do that. But
Mm.
offensively, they needed that, but defensively, um, you know, the little guys won in this game. The bigger team didn't win. The bigger team won the offensive rebounding battle, but ultimately it's about putting the ball in the basket. And Surrey put the ball in the basket more.
Mm.
And they have so much confidence in themselves at the moment. You can see the way that the guards. I think it's benefited them, Lawrence being out, because it's meant that Gooden and Ray have got into a rhythm of playing together and playing 30 odd minutes and understand and Lloyd's now more comfortable with that.
Mm.
So there's less rotation on them. I think that's helped them.
Ray, 25.7 assists. Delican, his only miss came with a minute and a half to go in the game. He was 7 of 8 for 20 points and 9 rebounds. Gooden, 14 points. Holloway, 20. Hadžibegovic, 13 points, 12 rebounds. Stuckman, 13
I think
points.
that's impressive about Delican is that's against the biggest front line in the league.
Mm. Mm.
That's not putting up, 20 points on Seneca Knight and Cole Long. That's on big guys.
Mm.
So it's really, really impressive.
We still have 4 games to go here.
Yeah.
Cheshire Phoenix 78, Leicester Riders 91. Shelton obviously back from suspension. Eichel Rock still out for Cheshire. Cheshire led early on, but 10 in a row with Wright getting half of them. Had Leicester 14-20 ahead. Another 7 in a row kept Leicester in front, but it was only a 2-point game at halftime.
Yeah, but I mean, the story in this over Cheshire's weekend is Timberlake
Mm.
didn't score a point in 2 games,
Yeah.
and didn't conduct himself with any degree of impressiveness at all.
Mm.
Doing that. What I mean by that is he didn't bite, he didn't fight for it, he didn't run back, he didn't battle, he didn't get a couple in the chops, take a charge. He basically missed a couple of shots, but not particularly good shots, powered it, not getting a foul, got a cheap technical, and Ben has to sit him down.
Mm.
And you can't be a player as talent. You can't be a player in this league who can drop 40 like he can and have two scoreless games in a row.
Mm. Mm.
And this is actually what came to me was, you know, we've talked about all season. Refs get so much crap off fans, right?
Mm.
All the time because I didn't see that call, didn't see that call, right? Okay. I'm guaranteeing you, no ref this year has had as bad a weekend as Nick Timberlake has,
Mm.
right? And but fans won't call out players because
Mm.
that there are players.
Mm.
That kind of sorts out the, and I understand that. You know, there are players. You might talk them after the game, whatever. We're not going to say he's rubbish, etc. But
Mm,
it just goes to show what a different viewpoint people come from in
mm,
relation to stuff. I mean, he should be embarrassed by his weekend. I'm not particularly being awfully aggressive with him because I don't like him. I think he's a really talented player. But the fact that he's so talented means that against two teams where his team needs him, he's scoreless.
mm,
Nonsense, right? So that was the thing. So Ben is then having to manage that, which is a problem because without Aitor, Rocky's is a body down already, and Leicester just picked them apart offensively in the game. I mean, they got layup, they got whatever shot they wanted, and they managed to survive the fact that they were probably dog tired, because it's hard to run when you're picking the ball out of your own net.
mm,
But the final thing I will say about Leicester is, can somebody please watch the tape and figure out this is how you guard Larry Austin? Because they backed off him. They guarded him with their length at the rim. They didn't give him anything easy at the rim. They didn't let him go past the defender at 12 feet from the basket and get to the rim and make layups. So at some point, this season, I've started to doubt myself about certain things. Is it just the way the game's played now? Is it such that you can't guard a guy this way because that's happened? Is there a reason they're not going under screens? Is it about deeper things in the schemes? Leicester just proved to me that I was right all along. Thank you. Um, you back away and you make him finish over the length. Abercrombie did that really well. Johnson did that well, and then they were left with Skylar knocking down some shots and Cameron Holden. But their offense was bitty, and
mm.
Leicester's offense was far more. I'm nearly worded out here with 4 games to go. This
Mm,
isn't good.
mm.
Leicester, it was cohesive, far more
Okay.
cohesive.
Mm.
The ball moved better. They got open shots, and they're kind of got that little look in their eye that they think they've got a shot at this now.
Abercrombie, Wright, Jackson all hit threes as Leicester started the third quarter 20-8 to lead 47-56 midway through the third quarter. And in the fourth quarter, they basically kept a double figure cushion all the way throughout. I thought Johnson moved without the ball tremendously well in this game.
Well, I
Uh,
think what I will say is that it's probably one of the easier teams to move without the ball against, because Cheshire do get caught
mm,
with their head turned at times defensively. Um, Generally, Cheshire defended the first action really well and the second action quite well, but as soon as the ball rotated, the third action and when with the attacks and as you say, the cuts to the rim, that's when they got picked apart. And Leicester are the best team in the league at getting to their second and third actions.
mm, mm. Scott Grayson, 19 points. Planutis, 5 of 8 for 3 for 15 points. White, 14.
Yeah,
Uh,
they did a less good job on Planutis than they did on Austin. I'll,
mm,
I'll say that as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Hunter, 18 points and 6 assists. Johnson, 14 points and 7 rebounds. Wright, 13 points and 7 rebounds. 13 points. They had 7 players in double figures and were 10 of 22 from 3. Let's go to Sunday. Bristol flies 73. Surrey 89 is 82. Surrey were 5 of 5 from 3-point range to start out. They ended up the first quarter 6 of 8 versus 0 of 7 from behind the arc for Bristol, and they were 14-28 up as a result. I said Bristol are pretty good when they make threes early in the game. They didn't make any in this game.
Yeah, the night before, didn't they? Sorry.
Mm, mm,
Rhythm.
mm,
Rhythm. Everyone feels good. You've got no better thing than getting your shots up in a game environment. I was thinking that as I was watching. Are they going to be able to survive it? Are they going to be able to survive Bristol's physicality and kind of hold them off once the shots stopped dropping? Because in the fourth quarter, the shots did stop dropping for them. But Bristol's offense was also a bit worn down. I think they didn't make the jump shots that they would ordinarily make in that gym. And Surrey kind of held on quite comfortably.
mm.
Outside of that, there really wasn't that much to this game.
No, I've got nothing
So
else. The
I
lead
thought,
peaked at
I thought
23 in the third quarter. It was only in the last 2 minutes that they got it to 9. They never
Well, they
went
missed a
beyond
lot of
9.
jump shots at the beginning of the fourth quarter, sorry, and you
Mm,
were going to think, can they hang on? Can they hang on? But they'd built themselves too big a gap, and Bristol
mm,
never got that head of steam going. Because sorry, look, again, the advantage of having the two little guards is, they don't turn the ball over that much.
mm,
You're not taking the ball off Cameron Gooden or Jalen Ray. You can get them the ball, and they can get a shot for you at any point. So, there was no situation where Bristol were able to kind of create multiple turnovers and get stuff going. But Delican, really good anchoring them. Hunt played well in this game as well. And I just think Surrey looked like a together group, and they look like they're one injury away from a bad situation. I'll say that. But they got Lawrence back now, which gives them that little bit more cover. And they just look like they're all really comfortable in the shots that they are shooting offensively.
Johnson 21, Lewis 18, Robinson 13 and 10. 36% field goal shooting, 25% from three. Adelican 17 points, 12 rebounds. James 16.7 rebounds. Gooden 15 points, 5 assists. Surrey were 10 of 25 from 3-point range, which is good, but it's also 5 of 20 after the first 5 minutes,
Legs,
which is,
rhythm,
yeah, yeah,
rhythm wins,
yeah,
rhythm and legs. The rhythm
yeah,
comes first and the legs give up later.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a betting tip, by the way. If you can
yeah.
bet for a quarter of a team who played the night before who've got a ton of shooters like that, bet it.
There you go.
There you
Betting
go.
with
Betting
Dave is back.
it is.
Manchester Basketball 99, Cheshire Phoenix 86. But we have to talk about the fact that Del Pesce's first career three sparked a 22-5 run to lead 26-13.
And on top of that, he doubled it in the same game.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, he's playing great.
yeah.
Let's not take the mickey here. He is playing great. No, if you watched him last year at Sheffield and he played kind of sporadic minutes, he's falling around a bit, didn't have any confidence. Really, there were some games he wouldn't get off the bench. You would think this isn't a BBL SLB player,
Mm,
right? He is now their best centre,
mm,
right? He's more reliable than FJ, and he's more mobile than Zahari. And the fact that he's now got the confidence to step out and knock down shots, and there's no reason why he shouldn't because he's got a good touch around the rim with his floater, and that he's earned the confidence of Mandalay, despite the fact that when Mandalay came in, he would have been the third choice guy, or he'd been down the bottom of the depth chart. Um, it's a really positive story.
mm,
Just really, really impressive. So the fact he made a three, that's what confidence does for you. The
mm,
coach is playing you, you're getting the chance to play through mistakes, and he's happy with the energy that you're getting. We talked how he basically won them a game
mm,
last week, I think in Caledonia, with an offensive rebound at the end, and that type of
mm,
stuff. So, let's stop just talking about the Americans, yeah, even though he's
mm,
part American. Let's
mm,
stop talking about the American passport.
mm.
Um, yeah, he's playing great.
The
Yeah,
whole
but
game, though, flipped in the second quarter. Scott Grayson got Cheshire going. White hit a couple of threes, and an 18-6 run tied the scores at 37 all in the middle of the third quarter.
yeah, I think Manchester just got a little bit comfortable.
Mm,
You've played, you're up 15, you've won by 30 on Friday night, you're 8-1, that's 9 games. Everything's going really, really well. But Cheshire aren't a team. 15 against Cheshire is 8 against anybody else. We know that. Scott Grayson, Skylar knocking down shots. Once they get going individually, they're dangerous scorers. Um, and Manchester ran out of a little bit of mojo, I thought.
mm. White picked up his third foul as well. It was close until an
He got
Ashton.
technical, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Can't get, yeah, can't get daft technical like that. I don't know whether it was fair or not, but you can't get it.
Ashton Langford hit a three, and then Del Pesce again, his second 3-pointer of his career, sparked a 14-4 run to 72-62. And Cheshire by that point were in massive foul trouble, and they never really recovered.
Massive foul trouble on Son Timberlake.
Mm,
Again, another zero. He can't be like that. If you, as a professional, that's the type of thing that really impacts your employability elsewhere.
mm,
You have to bring it every week,
mm,
you know, and that team needs him, and he is not providing for them. Um, so that knocks him down another player, and then Manchester are just a little bit deeper, and with a multitude of scorers, Mitchell and Kayo, they're probably. It's tough to think of a better 3-4 in the league. Maybe Jackson Abercrombie, but Mitchell and Kyle probably have a little bit more scoring juice,
mm.
you know, and that's without Ashton Langford running the show.
Ashton Langford, 19 points, 10 assists. Coyotes, 16.7 rebounds. Mitchell and DeBose both had 14. Scott Grayson, 28 points and 8 rebounds. White was 6 of 12 from three for 21 points, and Atwood had 18. And finally, Sheffield Sharks 90, Newcastle Eagles 79. Night out. Jeffrey starting this game. Not a lot in the first quarter, both led by four, but this was tight, really.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't sure, but I think the difference between flying back on a Thursday and playing on a Friday, and then having your 2 nights in your own bed make a difference in relation to preparing for a basketball game. And Newcastle kind of hung with Sheffield early, got good minutes from Defoe, who's in double figures in this game, which they kind of need. They need points from the inside because they got nothing. I don't think Defoe, Long, and uh,
Neighbour.
Neighbour had a single point in the game against Manchester. That's just not sustainable. Darius had 11 in this game, and Cole Long had 11, which gives the other guys something to kind of work from. Sheffield, I looked up, Sheffield had their entire bench in the game with 4 minutes to go in the first quarter.
Mm,
Maybe four of them, maybe all of them. Can't remember. But basically, they were able to rotate a lot of guys in and kind of wear Newcastle down. It probably hit their rhythm a little bit,
mm.
which the Newcastle kind of keep making plays. Um, Certainly, Ward Hibbert has been an absolute warrior through the past week. Really, really impressed with what he had. But in this game, without Knight, they need a Coro probably, and a Coro's out on his feet as well. So he struggled to make any plays in this game. Um, Sheffield, a lot of talent. McGill, I think, went off for three threes in a row in the third
Yeah,
and
yeah. But
quarter.
before we get there, just pick up on something that happened a minute and a half into the second quarter. Do you remember the little bit of handbags between Alan Ikins and Jeffries
Oh yeah,
where they got a double
yeah,
unsportsmanlike? Just wind it back 15 seconds before that,
right.
because there's a foul called against Newcastle. I think it was a Coro uh, pushing in the back of McGill. Will
Mm,
Neighbour slaps the ball off the board, slaps the ball off the board,
yeah,
slaps it down on the ground, slaps it down on the ground, and it gets away from him.
yeah. No,
That's worse than what Ricky McGill got a technical for on
Janet.
Friday night. Just saying, if we're going to call all these
But
crap technicals, that's a technical.
here's the other thing, because at the end of the third quarter, Will Neighbour actually got a technical from the bench.
Mm,
And it was on a play where I
just
think
standing up, yeah.
standing up where Paul Unsworth missed a obvious double dribble by
Mm,
Nixon on the half
mm,
court.
yeah, yeah.
And Neighbour stands up and you get standing up technical from the other side of the court.
Mm,
I used to hate them as well.
yeah,
If I'm
yeah, yeah,
I should be watching the court, not watching
yeah.
that. So
I'm assuming he said something as well
no,
as
he stood
standing
up.
up to
No, he didn't
bring
because he was given from
attention to
miles
it.
away. He was given from I know it was a standing up technical.
My point is really that was, don't call a technical on Will Neighbour, don't
Yeah.
call a technical on Ricky McGill, and don't call a technical
Let's
on,
allow
on
some
Jane.
emotion in the
And
game
that's it.
unless it's a real.
What's happened is Neighbour's got beat. He's ended up, his teammate commits a foul, and it's an and one, I think it was, and he's just gone like that.
Well, I
So
mean,
what? Carry on.
yeah, oh yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that. And basically, your technicals should be there to control the emotions of the game,
Mm,
not an individual player. Now, the emotions of the game is when a player's getting into it with another player, because
mm,
that's when the kickoffs can happen, and that's when
yeah,
you can
yeah.
kind of your doubles. Um,
Going
so
back to the point you were about to make, McGill hit a couple of threes,
eh,
and Sheffield were up eight, and they had a double figure lead in the
yeah,
third quarter.
Reece made a massive three on the buzzer as well, which
Yeah,
was
he
a
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the absolute bit of a game changer
yeah,
and a kick in the teeth for Newcastle. Um, and Yeah, so
James then
on
had
the
eight.
Aaron Aikens thing. Aaron Aikens has been on one all week.
Yeah, yeah,
He had a bit of
he did. Yeah, yeah,
on Friday night against Manchester. He was getting
yeah,
into somebody. Obviously, got thrown out of the final on Wednesday. Well, not thrown
yeah,
out, but he got
yeah,
taken to sports night on Wednesday.
yeah,
And he needs to start focusing on actually playing and
yeah.
not worrying about because he had 2 points in this game. He was
There,
back in this game.
there didn't seem any obvious reason to start that either.
No, it was just a bit. I think it was a bit of players talking to each other, and that it wasn't much to start. And they got it right by not calling anything. But I think as they don't get replay to look at it. It's a nonsense. You know.
Uh,
And then the
the
third quarter, Cole Long got going a little bit for Newcastle, but Sheffield kind of kept them at arm's length. And Newcastle got back. I think they got a lead at one point. Christian James.
James scored 8 points to cut it to 59-58, but then Sheffield had a 9-1 run early in the fourth quarter to 74-67. That was kind of it.
Yeah, not quite close enough. And as I say, for that. team to win in Sheffield. I think Michael Coro and Deshaun Anikins have to combine for more than 8 points or whatever it was
Mm.
it had.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not upset with them because, to be honest, as I say, Anikins had, well, they were both in the final five. They're both in the All-Star five of the ENBL
Yeah,
Final.
yeah, yeah.
So there's only so many times you can go to that particular well,
Mm.
and they're pretty much drunk it dry.
Mm. Grove, 7 of 8 for 19 points. McGill, 15 points and 6 assists. Reese, 14 points. Pulliam, 9 of 12 for 21.7 assists. James, 16.7 rebounds. And Josh Ward Hibbett, 12. So let's go through the table. London 21 and 7, Leicester 19 and 8, Sheffield 19 and 9. Let me clear up a few things on the title permutations because I tweeted out and got asked the question back. So I'll just make it clear. London, if they win all their games, they win the title. It doesn't matter what anybody else does, whatever else happens.
Games, yeah.
Leicester, if they win all of their games, they win the title. It doesn't matter what else happens,
Yeah.
because at worst they'll be tied with London, but they will have beaten London
Yeah.
in the tiebreaker 3 games to 1.
Yeah.
If Sheffield win all their games and Leicester lose one, they will win the title. I'm assuming the one will be to London because that would then put all 3 teams on 23 and 9. So it'd be a 3-way tie. The tiebreaker when 3 teams are tied is the head-to-head record in the games involving those 3 teams. Sheffield would be 5-3 because they would have beaten London in those 2 games. London would be 4-4 because they would have beaten Leicester, and Leicester would be 3-5. So the order would be Sheffield, London, Leicester, 1, 2, 3. And if Leicester beat London, London won't be 23 and 9, and then Sheffield could be tied with Leicester, but of course they have the head-to-head with Leicester. If Leicester were to lose a different game to the London game, they won the head-to-head 3-1. So Sheffield need either a 3-way tie or a tie with Leicester. In the event they get a tie with London and finishing the same record as London, but not Leicester, if Leicester are an outright third, Sheffield would need to overturn the points difference. At the minute, London have a 27-point lead because they won the first 2 games by a combined 27 points. So they'd probably need to win by 28 because 27 would almost certainly favour London because it would go to overall basket difference if the head-to-head was tied. If Sheffield won the other 2 games by 27, and currently London are plus 258 and Sheffield are plus 128. It seems unlikely that even with the 27-point turnaround adding up to
Win
54,
the goddamn games.
yeah, that they would then
That's probably
somehow
the,
get
uh,
another 100 points
yeah.
out.
I
So,
think, if you looked at it, because Sheffield and London have to play each other, then you have to say Leicester have the better running. They also have 2 or 3 home games which they've been really efficient at winning.
mm.
I think they've got maybe
Surrey at home,
Surrey,
Caledonia at
Bristol, and
home.
Caledonia maybe. They got Bristol at home maybe or not? Bristol away.
I can't remember. I just
I
know
remember they got
Surrey's
the
on
last game.
Thursday and Caledonia's the last game.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Surrey are nobody's pat a cake at the minute.
No. And Surrey
But
have been there and won, of course.
Surrey been there one. But overall, you would take that probably ahead of the kind of the claw your eyes out games that Sheffield and London are going to be playing against each other. Um, so they've got an extra game, of course, to
So
play.
Leicester's games are Surrey on the 17th, which I think is
Yeah,
Thursday. Cheshire at home
yeah.
on the 20th, which is Sunday. London away on the 23rd. Newcastle away on the 25th, and at home to Caledonia on the
I mean,
27th.
Newcastle are riding on struggling Caledonia by that point, maybe out of the playoffs. Um, and Cheshire, Leicester have handled Cheshire all season. That's that.
Sheffield's last 4 are uh, 2 home games against London, and in between those 2 home games against London are 2 away games at Caledonia. And then London's last four games are home to Bristol on the 16th, so that's Wednesday. Away to Sheffield, obviously, on the 18th. Home to Leicester on the 23rd, and away to Sheffield on the 27th.
They've got a nicely spread. They just need the roster.
Mm,
I don't think they're winning it with the roster they've got at the moment. They need British and they need Soko, so is absolutely critical to them. And obviously 2 games in Sheffield as well. You know, they're tough
mm,
games. Oof.
yeah, yeah.
I need a big ref for that. Maybe a EuroLeague ref.
The going back to the table, Manchester are 14 and 14 and now well in the box seat for fourth place, given the losses of all the other teams behind them. Cheshire are 12 and 17. Newcastle and Surrey are both 11 and 16. Bristol are 10 and 16, and Caledonia are 7 and 21. Surrey and Newcastle, by the way, not quite
Right.
in
Yeah.
the playoffs. They both have the head to head with Caledonia, but they could both end up in a three-way tie. Not together, obviously. Three-way tie with Bristol and Caledonia, which, with a reasonable but not out of this world points difference swing, could see them finish third in the three-way tie and miss out on the
This
playoffs.
is the you
It
see,
won't happen, but
somebody dared to call this podcast niche the other day, right?
yeah, I know.
And this, I mean, how can it with stuff like that? How
Stuff
could
like
it
that.
possibly be niche?
Yeah, definitely not.
Well,
So
yeah.
Surrey and Newcastle need one more result, and Caledonia need a
Oh,
miracle.
yeah, 4 wins. But as I say, that plays potentially in Leicester's hands because
Mm,
Leicester have to go to Newcastle, who will probably be in, and go to Caledonia, who will probably be out.
mm,
And home at Caledonia will probably be out. And
mm,
I don't see them losing either of those games. Because the one thing I learned over years and years and years of playing for the title to the end of the season is it's the team that wants it against the team that doesn't need it.
mm.
It's a hell of a thing for the team that doesn't need it to win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it really is. It's just because the team that doesn't need it is looking to make sure they're fresh for the playoffs.
Mm,
And there's a whole different degree of intensity. So I think that Leicester's trip game is probably Surrey.
mm,
Obviously London don't have any. I think London will beat Bristol. I think they've had lost 3 in a row, and I think they'll be ultra focused. And then they haven't got any trick games. They've just got 3 big games:
mm,
Leicester, Sheffield, and Sheffield. Where those 2 games against Caledonia? Well, depends how long Caledonia keep winning, doesn't it?
mm, mm,
Because Bristol lose it. I mean, they got to get at least 3 to get to Bristol.
mm,
3 out of 4. No, I'm not sure. I
mm,
think they might just drop one. That might be it.
mm.
But yeah, it should be interesting. Should be
It
fun.
will be interesting. We're going to have to make a decision about what to do next week as well, because obviously there's Easter Monday basketball, whether we go for Tuesday night. We
Tuesday.
definitely can't do Sunday night because I am watching my team get battered again by the league champions.
Okay,
So maybe we scored a goal. They scored 2 goals, so we can have a goal of the month competition this month.
Credible
That's
3-0
change.
defeat to Eddie's black and white GB.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you got the hope away early. You gave up 3 goals in 20 minutes, so
Yeah,
get
that's
the
how we
hope.
like to do it, mate. That's how
Yeah.
we did that to Everton away as well. 2
I
nil
mean,
down
try and
in
make the
10
fans
minutes.
stay for the whole game. It's very
Yeah.
old-fashioned.
Half of them didn't even bloody turn up in the first place. A lot of empty seats before the game. But yeah, yeah. So we're definitely not going to be doing Sunday night next week, but we'll decide what we're going to do about the Monday games as well. Because I don't even know, are they in the daytime or are they in the evening? Don't even know that actually.
The Monday game's 4:30 at Newcastle.
What date is the Monday? It's the
It's
21st. Oh, is it only one game on the Monday, Newcastle Bristol? Oh, we should
30.
probably do it after that then, shouldn't
That's
we?
fine. Yeah, yeah,
That would make sense. There
yeah.
we go. Executive editorial decision made in real time with a quick check of what time the tip-offs are. So yes, we'll be back next week as the league title race will take another twist and turn, no doubt, between now and when we return, in the playoff battles as well. And we'll go through all of that, and hopefully it won't quite be as many games as it's felt like it's been tonight. It's been a lot tonight.
It has indeed. I need a rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see you all next week. People, enjoy the basketball. Goodbye.